Today we're going to be talking about what to consider when buying a laptop. So the first thing we're going to go over is why you might want to buy a laptop in the first place. Well, firstly, the main advantage of the laptop compared to a desktop, obviously, is its portability, right? Where you can carry it wherever you go, easily in a bag. On top of that, it's very convenient with the same convenience as a desktop computer with very many possible uses from entertainment to work, etc. um, your laptop can be customizable. And compared to a phone or an iPad, typing on a keyboard for work is a lot easier than typing on the screen of your iPad or phone.
Okay.
And then more modern keyboards have the ability to download and or access many different apps, extensions, and websites, giving you the capability of most desktop computers. Some models also have a touchscreen, for example, which can add some extra convenience to using your laptop. And obviously, it's a bigger screen and more storage than most smartphones and tablets. So, what are the main things that we're going to go over to consider when you want to purchase a laptop? Well, the five big ones are the brand of the laptop, the cost or your budget for purchasing it, how much storage do you want, what will you be using the laptop for, and whether it's better to get a laptop computer or a desktop computer. So firstly, we're going to go over a couple of big name laptop brands. And so the main distinction between these brands is that is usually the operating system. So the most consumer laptops are either iOS or which is I think iOS is for iPhone, but they're made by Apple, and then the rest use Windows. And so there's a lot of companies that make Windows laptops, but only Apple makes Mac OS laptops. And so the biggest laptop brands are Apple, and then for the Windows laptops, Microsoft makes laptops, but then some of the big companies you may have heard of are HP, Asus, Dell, and Google. So Apple, for the pros, well, they have a very high quality display with the liquid retina displays. Apple computers are usually pretty fast, and because of iCloud, it allows for to work within the Apple environment. Let's say if you have an iPad or an iPhone, it's very easy to transfer files or photos from your other Apple devices to your Apple laptop. Most Apple laptops have multiple ports, including HDMI and MagSafe, and some models also have a touch bar, which is an extra added functionality. I think the newest ones don't have it anymore, but some still do. However, some cons of Apple laptops, the price will usually be higher compared to Windows laptop brands. The newer models, such as the Pro 2021, I think it's a little older, but they are a bit heavier. And the battery life varies between models. And also, none of the current Apple laptop models have a touchscreen, which is a pretty common feature on some Windows laptops. Also, a pretty common theme with Apple products is that the cost to repair is very high. So usually their laptops are well built, but if you do run into a problem with it, repairing it at the Apple store can be pretty expensive. And in a lot of cases, people have to buy extra attachments such as dongles to be able to use all of the capabilities of the laptop, such as, for example, connecting it to an external display. And so I think this is a bit outdated, but you can see the price for MacBooks is usually pretty high, but they do come with, as we mentioned, a lot of pros. Then Microsoft, the company that makes the Windows operating system, also has a few laptops that they sell. Some of their products serve as both a laptop and a tablet, and they give you the ability to connect if you have an Android smartphone, making it easier to access pictures, messages, and apps in your contacts from your Android phone to your laptop. Some Windows laptop models also come with a touchscreen display, and the price is pretty flexible depending on the model you get. However, these also do come with some cons because it doesn't use macOS. It is a little more prone to malicious software just because it's easier to download stuff off the internet, which can be useful for certain apps, but it also does come with a bit of risk. The best solution for this is always to not click or download things that you don't recognize or using antivirus software. And these Windows laptops, such as this Microsoft one, offer a lot of customizability for the user of the laptop, but that also adds some technical challenge compared to Mac OS, which is usually more straightforward. These are some of the recent Microsoft laptop models. You can see the Surface laptop is a bit of a mix between a laptop and a tablet, and then the Laptop Go is a more typical kind of laptop form factor. Another common brand for Windows laptops is HP. Again, they give you sometimes the option to get a touchscreen display or to use your laptop in more of a tablet form. You also have the ability to connect to your Android device, as we mentioned earlier, and the repair costs are generally considerably lower than with an Apple laptop. However, again, it is prone to more malicious software, and some of these more budget laptops from companies such as HP and others that we'll get to in a second will be quite a bit slower and won't last you as long before they start to really not run properly. So that is one of the risks that you might have to replace it in a few years just because it won't be nearly as good as when you bought it. This is one of the more recent HP models. You can see this one's is around $1,000, but they do have some budget-friendly models that are cheaper, which some, for example, Microsoft and Apple don't have as much budget-friendly options. Another popular company is Asus. They make laptops that are generally considered to be very fast. Again, they often offer that two-in-one deal. And they have high resolution screens. And so Asus offers a lot of very high-end laptops, but also some very good budget options, giving you a good kind of spread for the price. However, it also does come with some cons because of the high resolution and very bright screen that these Asus laptops have, your battery will be drained faster than on other laptops. And also because they are more powerful computers, they will often also have a bit more weight to them. And there's been some concerns with poor customer service from Asus. So these are some of the more recent Asus models you can see. They can start decently cheap for laptops, around $400, but then some of the more advanced models do get quite more expensive if you need that extra performance. Dell is also a pretty popular Windows laptop company. This is the company that my laptop is from. They're usually pretty affordable for some of their more budget-friendly models and have a really good warranty policy. They're great in terms of security, very customizable, and again, give you that option to connect to your Android devices. However, because they are more budget-friendly, the screens aren't necessarily the highest quality, so the images won't look nearly as good as on a more expensive laptop. The battery life is a bit shorter, and it is heavier than most laptops with not the best build quality, but it is usually a pretty good budget-friendly option. And so you can see with some of these recent Dell models that they can start pretty cheap, but then they do also have some more expensive, higher power laptops if that's what you're looking for. And then finally, Google laptops. Google laptops don't actually use Windows. They use their own operating system, Chrome OS, which does make them quite a bit cheaper because their hardware doesn't need to be nearly as powerful to run this operating system. And that also gives them a longer lasting battery. However, because these laptops are such low power, they also have low storage. They often struggle to run more complicated apps. And personally, I've had some issues with Chrome OS where it is very simple to use, which is obviously an advantage, but it also strongly limits how much you can do with the laptop compared to, for example, a Windows laptop. And as we mentioned here, they also will require Google Cloud printing if you want to use them with a printer, which may not be compatible with everything. And the support for the Chrome OS is pretty limited, so each device will stop getting updates after a certain amount of time. And so these are some of the more recent Chromebook models. You can see again, they can start pretty cheap, which is usually why people will get a Chromebook just because of that kind of budget advantage. But they do have some pretty considerable cons. Now, for the cost of a laptop, it'll vary a lot depending on the brand that the laptop is coming from, the type of laptop, and the year it was released. Here you can see kind of a price range of laptops from different companies. You can see Apple is by far the most expensive, going but the cheapest being around $1,000 and getting up to above, $3,000 for the highest spec laptops, which obviously not everyone needs, but it does get pretty expensive. And then you can see some of these other companies like Microsoft, HP, Dell, and Google do give some more budget-friendly options compared to Apple, but obviously, those more budget-friendly options do come with some cons. In terms of storage, this is also a very important consideration when you're looking to purchase a laptop, because storage is what's going to determine what you're really going to be able to do with the laptop, because all of your videos, photos, music, your documents, all of those things are usually going to be stored locally on your laptop. You can use cloud storage in some cases, but storage does determine quite a lot how you use your laptop, and so it's generally going to be dependent on what you really need the laptop for. So for most non-professional users, 250 gigabytes to 320 is the norm. If you're a pretty light user, so you don't use your computer a ton or you don't have any big video files, 128 gigabytes or 250 is usually a good amount, but 320 is recommended, which is enough storage for 300 movies or 40,000 songs. If you have a lot of large video files, such as movies or a lot of pictures and documents that take up too much space, we would recommend getting at least 500 gigabytes, but that will up the price of the laptop by a bit. And as I mentioned earlier, an option you can do to save the storage on your laptop is to use cloud storage or to transfer those big video or photo files to a hard drive. However, that hard drive will have to be purchased separately because it most likely won't come with your laptop. So now, what are the main uses of purchasing a laptop? Well, firstly, for entertainment, it can be very useful because you can download or stream music, shows, or movies, as well as using streaming services, Netflix, Disney, etc. You can also play fun games on your laptop, either on the internet or downloaded on your computer, and take and edit your photos and videos. And the main advantage compared to a desktop computer is that you can do these things practically anywhere because your laptop is very portable, while still having a bigger screen than, let's say, if you were watching a movie on your phone or iPad. For learning purposes, you can always do educational activities online through your laptop. For example, finding surveys that you want to, about topics you want to learn more about, searching online for specific topics, using Google Translate to learn more about a language, or watching video tutorials as we often do here on YouTube. And again, the main advantage of a laptop in all of these cases is that bigger screen and the keyboard, etc., compared to your phone, while still maintaining, portability and being able to take it with you and do these things kind of on the go. So it makes it a good compromise between the small screen of a phone and the lack of portability of a desktop computer. You can also do online shopping or banking from a laptop, which will often be easier than on your phone just because of the practicality of having a keyboard and trackpad. You can shop from anything from clothing, electronics, furnishings, etc., from whichever website you'd like to. For online banking, it makes it easy to manage your bills or send money to friends through your bank's website on your laptop, giving you easy access to your account. Another example that I've seen is shopping for groceries online. You can find websites to order your groceries from and either pick it up at the store or have it delivered straight to your door. You can also browse without nearly as much limitations as a phone or a tablet. Most sites are optimized for those devices, however, not all are. And because of that smaller touchscreen, it can be harder to navigate some more complicated sites or applications. And there are a lot of applications that are either not available at all or are very limited when you don't use them on a computer. But again, having that laptop allows you to use those more complex applications while still being able to bring it with you. And so that kind of brings us into our final part here, the differences and advantages of a laptop versus a desktop. So the pros, as I said, it's very portable and mobile, which is obviously the biggest advantage and the reason most people want to get a laptop. You can bring it with you practically anywhere. It's a lot more quiet usually than a desktop computer. You just need to have a charging cable with you in case your battery runs out. But you also don't need to purchase an external keyboard, mouse, monitor, or mouse pad, which you usually need for a desktop. And obviously, because it has its own battery, it doesn't need to be plugged in at all times, meaning that you can bring it with you and have a few hours of autonomy wherever you are. However, this also comes with some cons. Laptops can be quite expensive because of the added cost of slimming all the electronics down and adding a battery. They're also often more fragile. They have a limited battery life, which means you are kind of restrained by how long your battery lasts. And because they're more compact, it's sometimes harder to upgrade and replace parts, which makes repairing much more expensive. But that kind of depends on the model and manufacturer. And now comparing that to a desktop, one of the big advantages of a desktop computer is that it's upgradable, which means it's a lot easier to build on a specific budget, whether that be pretty cheap or more high end, because the components are a lot easier for someone to replace, making repairs cheaper. The bigger screen and the peripherals also make things easier to read and work with. However, desktop computers can also take up a lot of space because you need the actual computer itself and then all of the peripherals, whether that be your mouse, your keyboard, your display, etc. Desktop computers, if you're using them pretty extensively, can also get pretty noisy with the fans inside, which isn't as much of a problem with most laptops. And obviously, you lose that portability because it's heavier. You can't really transport it. It requires a plugged connection to be able to actually function. And there's a lot more accessories needed to actually operate your desktop computer.